Welcome into this edition of RG Live. I am Chase Parham, as you're aware. Plenty of coverage at rebelgrove.com. Neil has been in Hoover all week long. I have missed my second College World Series, or sorry, not College World Series, but SEC tournament since started covering the team. The 2 years, this year and 2006. So both years at Ole Miss has won the SEC title. I have not been there. Very similar obligations both times. But anyway, we have coverage. We have plenty at rebelgrove.com. But let's talk about it as we give people a few minutes to log in here. I had some issues with the link on the first one. It wasn't working. My computer froze, so I had to set another one. So give people a few minutes to find this. Let us see what's going on. But Ole Miss wins 9-1 over LSU, as you're all very aware of right now, winning several games in a row to claim the conference title, the first one since 2006, the third overall. They won the very first one in 1977. That one was in Oxford, and then obviously in Hoover in 2006. So as we're getting going, everybody hearing me good, give me some comments, ask any questions, and we'll kind of get started. I've got some thoughts too that I'll intermingle into this. But what you got? Give it to me. Let's see if we're working. Everybody hear me? Okay, we good? All right. Seeding, it's a good place to start because I think Ole Miss came into this thing needing a win. I was not one of the people that thought they could go 0-2 and be a national seed this week. I think Georgia's going to be really scuffling, really nervous tomorrow as they find out their situation because of that. But for Ole Miss, once they got one win, I thought they ran. I thought 7 seed, 8 seed, something like that. Once they got to yesterday, I thought, okay, maybe they're probably moved up to 6, 5, somewhere in there. I think right now, when you put all these resumes next to each other, Florida's probably still number one. Stanford played very few top 25 teams, but I still think winning the Pac-12, being where they are in the RPI, they're going to get a very high seed. They're one of the only West Coast teams with Oregon State that has any kind of juice or helium whatsoever. So I think there too. I'd have Ole Miss at 3 right now. I think Ole Miss has a decent chance at that number 3 overall national seed. Arkansas probably right there at 3 or 4. They're definitely going to get 3. We'll see what Georgia has tomorrow. I still like their resume. That 0-2 is kind of loud, but from an overall season standpoint, I like Georgia's resume. I think they've got a decent shot at that number 8 spot. But for Ole Miss, I think 3 is possible, 4 is possible. Anything below that probably is unfair to a team that is 46-15 on the season. They win 22 SEC games. They just dominate games against top 25 opponents. That's the thing about Ole Miss is you look at it, and the better the opponent is, I know a lot of the games are at home, but still, the better the opponent is, the better they played. And, you look at what they did in Hoover this week, losing that first game. I think as long as everybody's healthy, Gray Kessinger today injured his hamstring. Tyler Keenan's been out for a few games. We're being told that both those guys would have played had it really mattered, had it been games that, to continue a season, that kind of mattered. Not saying that they didn't matter, but you know what I mean. Regional, super regional. I think both those guys played. But the way this week went about may be perfect for Ole Miss. They lose that opener. They face whatever adversity you can face given the way their season has gone. And then they turn around and they get to give a big comeback against Georgia. They dominate Auburn. They dominate, at least on the mound, A&M and LSU back-to-back games. You're looking at a pitching staff that over the last 27 innings allowed 2 runs, 1 earned, I think, 1 run to 2 teams and then had another shutout. So just a dominating effort. And then 2 of the guys spearheading that, people that could be in your weekend rotation next year with Jordan Fowler, Houston Roth. They get offense from all these different places. They've got to handle things. They've got to find ways to take up for other guys. Kessinger comes out. Servideo made great plays in the field today. They found offense without Tyler Keenan. And then Mike Bianco, and for the appropriate number of pitches for it to be no matter whatsoever on Friday, if he ends up throwing that off opener, he's going to be fine. Rollison, no issues there whatsoever. I don't think that today had anything to do. We'll see if Mike Bianco says something different about this. The press conference is going on right now. I don't think Friday or Saturday or matchups had anything to do with today. I think it's that Ryan was never going to throw, 70 pitches or anything today. It was going to be a short stint. It was going to be a high leverage situation whenever he was needed, which is what happened. And then 2, Neil had a bunch of stats about this on the message board. Ryan this season has been much better with less rest. When you give him, 4 days rest versus 5 versus 6, everything's been a little sharper. His numbers are better. So that's a little interesting thing on Rollison there too. We've talked all year about how Will Etheridge hasn't bounced back as much his second time in outings this season. Rolliston's been the reverse. He's been a little worse when he does get too much rest. So if anything, this could have been a positive. It's a way where, these guys aren't robots. You've got to handle the guys depending on whatever they do well. I mean, everybody used to give Mike crap for, throwing Lance Lynn the number of pitches he did. Well, Lance handled that. A lot of other guys couldn't handle that, but Lance was almost all fastballs. He was a guy that could go late in games, keep his velocity up, keep his mechanics up, where there wasn't a lot of overpronation or things being injured. So, Mike handled the roster really, really well. He got a lot of guys' experience this week in some big situations, and we'll see where it goes from here, because now is when it really matters. They're going to get a regional at home. They're going to get a super regional at home if they win the regional. And for a team that's 28-4 at Swayze Field this season, that's huge. The path is there for Ole Miss to go on a run. I'll get into some questions here as I'm just kind of rambling, waiting on people and waiting on more questions. Is this Mike's best team beginning a regional considering the rest of the field? When I look at that, I put 4 teams in that category. I think this year's team, certainly, 2014, 2009, 2005. I think those are the 4 best teams when you look at the overall metrics that Mike has had. This team, win a regional or anything like that. Not like that. They've been able to do that the whole year. But when you put them in context against Mike's other great teams, because of that starting pitching lag, I mean, we're also talking about a team that doesn't have its All-American closer from the start of the season. Dallas Wolfolk's been gone for a number of games now, but they found depth in so many different places that, I think this team's at least in the conversation, because, there were some holes in spots with the other teams. This team may not be as top-heavy and as good as some of those other rosters when you just put, player next to player next to player. But when you look at the overall aspect of 1 through 27 on a travel roster, there's not many holes. That's why the offense is so good. It's not because they've got all these, different bangers that are some of Mike's best players ever. It's that there's not a hole in that 1 through 9. It's hard to get 27 outs against this team because the way that they battle 1 through 9 without being the pitcher, when he gets to 8, 9, he's got Cockrell, he's got Jacob Adams, who's played pretty well. He doesn't have that layoff where he gets that free inning. There's no free innings against this team. So, that's the thing here. Yes, there's a second video for this that was created that has some people waiting. Yeah, come to the one that's working. I had some issues with my feed. You've got to pick the episode that was working out. My computer froze, so when I hit refresh, it started over. Not much I can do about that. Is the park at Hoover comparable to Omaha? It is comparable dimension-wise. I think the ball still gets out of Hoover better than it does in Omaha because of the wind. In Omaha, the way that thing is built, the wind is one way through February and March, and then it reverses kind of after that. That's the thing there, is the outfielders have to play so deep they get to play up so much in Omaha because it's almost impossible to get the ball up over the outfielders' heads, that the park plays different because you don't have those singles. At least in Hoover, you can still bloop the ball over the infielders. You can find some Texas leaguers that just kind of fall in. In Omaha, you don't have that because the outfielders play so far up. You've got to dribble balls. You've got to hit ground balls through the infield for base hits. You lose base hits in cheap doubles in Omaha that you don't necessarily lose in Hoover. That's the biggest difference between the 2 parks. Sorry, as I started the show, seed prediction, I'm gonna guess 3 or 4. I would have them at 3 if I was in the committee room and I got a vote. 4 would make sense too. I think anything lower than 5 is a disservice to this team. They're better than that. Their metrics are better than that, and they deserve a little better thing because used to it didn't really matter. As long as you're one of the top 8 seeds, you were going to play at home, and everything else was kind of geographic. Everything was just a matter of making sense. Well, that's not the case now. They're seeding 1 through 16. So if you're 3, you get the 14. If you're the 8, you get the 9. So every one of those little spots, at least in theory, gives you a better chance in a relatively weaker opponent for the next round. So we'll see. But I think top 5 is a good thought for Ole Miss. I think they're definitely going to be in there because all of a sudden, when I put everything side by side, especially with the road and neutral site record, I like the resume better than Arkansas. I came into the tournament not really thinking that. I thought Arkansas had a little better overall resume. I think now Ole Miss has passed them because, the way the SEC tournament and all conference tournaments should work is they should be able to help you. They shouldn't be able to hurt you. You can't let a neutral site difference of the way you play games affect things more than a 56-game schedule. Now, if you get hot and you run through and you help your metrics and numbers, yeah, absolutely, let that help you. But otherwise, I don't think it should be able to hurt you, and that's something that we'll see tomorrow. I'm curious about what it means for Georgia, how much this has helped Ole Miss, and then maybe what you do with Stetson, because they've got the RPI anomaly there where they're at number 4 right now. And now, look, they're a good club. They can really, really, really pitch it. We'll find out in the morning. They're going to be a host, and they're a dangerous team because of them on the mound. But they don't hit very well. They've got very few games against the top 50. They've got few games compared to everybody else against the top 100. And I just think that keeps them out of a national seed. I think Stetson ends up being pain for somebody as a 9 or 10 overall seed. If I was doing it, it's hard to give them because of the schedule, and they don't have a Power 5 name, one of those top 8 seeds. Now, and saying that, you look at Oregon State and Stanford, and I don't know how it finished up, but there for the longest time, their games against each other were the only top 25 games they had played. But Pac-12 history, they're going to get more of a benefit of the doubt than the Hatters are, even though the Hatters can really pitch it. And everybody's saying, well, it's a team that you'd love to have in your park. They've got some guys, so I think they are dangerous, but it's hard to give them a top 8 seed. Scott Smith says, what do you think the main difference between this year and last year's teams? Experience is the really easy answer, but just because you're experienced doesn't mean you're better. I think this is a deal where you had buy-in with the players. I think you had really talented freshmen that had culture shock, that were always the best players on the field, and they had to find a way to overcome that. They had to fix things in their games. They had to fix things mentally, and Mike Bianco, Mike Clement, really good job of getting those guys in the right places to be successful, and every one of them took steps. I mean, you look just number versus number, from Gray Kessinger to Thomas Dillard to Cole Zabowski, even to Nick Fortes. It's a year older than some of these other guys. I mean, Fortes is maybe one of the more interesting guys to be on this team, because he comes in and everybody forgets he was a top 100 player. He was the highest ranked kid coming into that class, and within a year, he was overshadowed because of Cooper Johnson and because of all those other guys. And Fortes has become a leader. He's become the guy that's kind of made this team go in a lot of ways. And kind of curious what happens with him in the draft a week from tomorrow as well, because I think he's got a lot of tools. He's got a lot of really good makeup, and he's already graduated too. So I'm kind of curious what happens with him. But a lot of credit to Nick Fortes, what he's been able to do. Who gets game 1 regional start? I don't know. Let's see the bracket. Mike has held the guy a couple times. It typically has not worked out real well. Grady Hinchman did beat Ole Miss 1-0 in 2004. Now that wasn't the pitcher's fault, but they still lost that opening game. Ole Miss didn't get out of a regional when they held Bobby Wall in Raleigh. So my gut tells me Rolison still throws the first game, but we'll see. When I look at the brackets, I think Northwestern State makes – or not when I look at the brackets, sorry. When I look at the teams that are in, Northwestern State makes the most sense as Ole Miss's 4 seed. They typically like the teams to drive as that 4 seed. They don't want to put a 4 seed on a plane if they can help it. Now, I know a lot of you guys are rolling your eyes because Utah is the Pac-12 champion, the 4 seed 2 years ago, but typically they don't like to do that. They like to drive a team in, and when State's not hosting, LSU's not hosting, A&M's not hosting, it creates a really big gap from a region standpoint. So, I mean, Northwestern State, sorry, they're the team that makes the most sense from a 4 seed driving to Oxford. I think when you look at the rest of the bracket, if I had to just give some guesses on teams that can be in consideration, obviously Southern Miss. I think you're looking at maybe Texas or Baylor as a 2 seed in Oxford. Those wouldn't shock me if it was not the Golden Eagles, because Texas, they win the Big 12, but their RPI today was down to 23-24. I just think that's too low for a Power 5 team. I know it's Texas, but I have a hard time believing that's a host with that metric of an RPI. So I think that because of the weird gap geographically, Ole Miss is probably looking at a situation of maybe Northwestern State, and then probably getting a Big 12 team or Southern Miss in as their 2 seed. That would make the most sense to me. And look, Southern's not a guarantee. We'll find out in the morning, but they could easily go to Florida State. They could go to Auburn if Auburn gets a spot. And I'm a little different than a lot of people. Everybody goes, well, Auburn won some games here. They put a great resume together. I just think 15-15, or not getting above 500 in the league is just not enough. I think that you've got to be above 500 in a league to host. So I don't think I would have Auburn in the 16. And if you're Ole Miss, looking at this, that might be one of the big things that I'm looking at, and that we'll see more tonight. Tonight, by the way, 7:30 Central is when the host sites will be announced. Oxford, obviously, one of those. But those are on social media. The Twitter username for that is NCAA CWS. NCAA College World Series CWS is the Twitter spot, and then 11 o'clock tomorrow will be the actual selection show and when you see the national seeds. But what I'm going at is kind of going back to a minute ago. Let's say Auburn ends up the 15 seed, whatever. You want to make sure you're in a spot where you kind of avoid them, because I think they'd be a very, very dangerous super regional opponent just because you've already played them so much. You've got Casey Mize, you've got Tanner Burns, and the pitching staff there. So I think those are, does the committee get cute and say, well, we can see these guys 1 through 16, so it gives us more of a chance to put conference versus conference? Does it give us more of a chance to do something where Ole Miss faces East Carolina in a super regional with the whole Mike Cliff thing? I want to see what the committee does from that standpoint of, do they alter it 1 or 2 spots simply to avoid some of those things and reward teams accurately? Because that's the thing too. When you start trying to get cute with things, you end up not rewarding them the way that they necessarily should be rewarded, because you're trying to play with the bracket a little too much. So that's one of the main keys I want to see tomorrow, considering there's no drama left with Ole Miss as far as where they're going to be playing the next 2 weeks if they win baseball games. Any chance Gray rests at the Super Regional? Nah, I think Gray will play next week. I was told today, the media relations staff at Ole Miss also put out that he could have stayed in the game had it been a regional, that they just pulled him out for precautionary reasons. And I'll tell you, Servideo defensively is so good. I think a lot of people didn't see that early. He had a couple errors, and then Jacob Adams took the second base spot. But Servideo, big-time arm, good instincts, good range. He's going to be a name to know in the future years, whether it be at second base or shortstop, because he is very, very talented defensively. So if nothing else, I'm glad that he's getting some time and people are able to see that. All right, what else we got? Just throw questions at me if you have them. Rawlson was fine today. He was dominant. He threw 30 pitches. I think he threw 22 strikes, and there was nothing bad there. He'll be fine for Friday if they choose to throw him on Friday, but it's impossible to guess that till we've seen anything. All of a sudden, looks like Ole Miss has found bullpen depth. Yeah, it's a 56-game schedule. And, it's not 162 games, and there's not the amount of time for lapses and things to happen where you lose them and you have them and you find them again. But there's still going to be weeks where things don't work out. But when you look at it overall, Ole Miss still has a lot of talent. And at the end of the day, that talent can find itself. So you're talking about Caracci. You're talking about Holston, that he's going to throw strikes. I think this thing with Greer, he's gotten hit a little bit, but he's got a great K to BB ratio. He's going to give you innings from that regard. I thought today was important for Stokes to get out of a little bit of a jam, throw some balls across the plate that ended up in outs. And then, with the emergence of Roth being healthy, he's gotten over that hamstring. And then Fowler, they have depth, and not just depth, but guys that fit different niches, guys that fit different roles that Mike can piece together. They don't have a lot of diversity right-left. Jordan Fowler is the only left-handed bullpen arm. But they do have diversity in what people bring to the plate, how you can use people in leverage situations. And, look, that's important. That's a huge thing for Ole Miss. And that's kind of what I was talking about with this being a really critical week for Ole Miss from a confidence standpoint and from a way they went about their business, because Roth suddenly has a lot more confidence. Jordan Fowler has more confidence. Holston gets the bat earlier, takes it out of his mouth, and has a good day today, to finish it up and be on the mound when this thing ends. So they got so many different guys to end the season prior to the regional on a good note, and that can't be overstated. That's a huge thing for Ole Miss moving forward to next Friday as they get whatever the 4 seed is. Do these guys stay or go in the draft? I have a lot of draft coverage as this week goes on. Again, the first day of the draft is June the 4th. That is a week from Monday. So I'll talk to some people. I've got plenty of people that I talk to. I always write a way too long, frankly, comprehensive overview of the draft for Ole Miss every year, and I'll get into that. But just off the top of my head, I do think there's a decent chance they lose all 3 weekend starters. I think Rawlison, he's a top 20 pick. He's gone. I think a team's going to fall in love with Feigl just because of what he can bring to you from a stuff standpoint. And then with MacArthur, he's got the big fastball, he's got the big frame, and it just takes one club to think that they can, make him a little more consistent from a mechanic standpoint, make that rhythm happen a little more consistently. So, you've got these juniors that when they come back, what are you coming back for? How can you get better? And that's the question when you're looking at a Ryan Olenek. You know, he's not necessarily projected very highly, but does he just want to go? What happens next? That's kind of one of those deals with a lot of these guys. So that's why I need to see what certain teams like about him. It's hard to say. I think Gracie could be a 5th to 7th round pick, maybe, just off the top of my head. Again, need to talk to some people. But, you know, Cockrell doesn't have a position, so that hurts him at the next level. And same with Olenek in all the ways. You know, he's kind of a jack of all trades, but there's not that one spot where a club necessarily likes him to be a premium defender. He's not going to hit for a lot of power at the next level. So there's enough question marks for Ole Miss to feel pretty good about the roster coming back. And then I really like their chances with their high school guys. You know, you wonder about Joe Gray, but as of right now, if you made me just guess one way or the other, I think he shows up at Ole Miss. The helium's backed off of Gunnar Hoglund a little bit, and there's a couple of JUCO guys to watch. JUCOs can get a little funky, so we'll see with that as it moves forward. What other national seeds scare me when it comes to potential College World Series matchups? That's cart before its talent. I mean, Florida, look, they took their foot off the gas, boy. I mean, they still pitched their pitchers. I think there was a misconception, you know, when Mississippi State swept them that they didn't throw certain guys. Well, Brady Sinker had a little bit of an injury. They threw Jackson. They threw some other guys. So it wasn't like they completely pulled the roster out of the game. They just didn't play well, and they're going into this on a losing streak. They're going on to this thing where they've got to suddenly hit the gas again. Maybe they do it, but if you're Florida, you do have to wonder a little bit. You're also coming off a championship season. You've gotten fat a little bit over the success that program's had. So I don't know. If I was just looking at a team that could be a little weird and that shouldn't be weird over the next week or two, Florida might be my pick. But yeah, I think Oregon State, maybe out of the teams that we don't talk about, we don't see a lot with Heimlich and those guys, would be the one that would worry me a little bit if I was an SEC team getting into Omaha and trying to make a run there. Neal did not complain the entire week. He was a trooper all week long. I really appreciate what he did because I had that obligation that I had to do, and he handled it well. It was all good. So we made a good team there. We got plenty of coverage in some different ways, and we'll have great coverage the rest of the season and through regionals, super regionals, and if this team does make the College World Series. So what else we got in the last few minutes here? Just shoot them in if you got questions. I will put a 1-16 prediction on the board, but I don't have it in front of me, so it's impossible for me to do that right now. Ole Miss was still number 5 in the RPI when I looked a second ago. I had that up on my phone, and they were in yeah, I mean, it's in good shape. It's not one of those deals where there's any question about it, no matter what this RPI does. Ole Miss finishes the regular season, the conference tournament, 20-12 against top 50 teams. That's a big number. They're 8-2 against the 51 through 100. So top 100, we're talking 28 and 14, 2-1 there. So huge numbers, great metrics for Ole Miss, and they'll get a national seed tomorrow without question. Let's see what's anybody else got as we wrap up here. I didn't even have it in front of me. Who was MVP of the SEC tournament? Who'd the media vote for? Anybody see that? Fortes makes a lot of sense. He was done on everything, and I mean, I'll tell you, I made the comment yesterday. He doesn't get enough credit for his selection at the plate. He's got all the power. He's clutch. His metrics from a runner's own, from an opportunity standpoint, are really good, and he's got a great eye. He walks enough, and he at least doesn't swing at a ton of bad pitches. So, yeah, Fortes is the guy that's taken the biggest step from me outside of those freshmen. What he's just been able to do from a day-to-day standpoint and to keep everything together. So I can't say enough good things about his season. Ole Miss always has a watch party tomorrow for the selection show, so we'll be there. We'll have coverage of that, and then the rest of the day. I'll probably come back and do another one of these tomorrow afternoon once we see the bracket, once we see the teams that are coming to Oxford, see who's matched up on the other side for potential super regional. We'll break all that down on video. I think that'll be good. So I'll do a YouTube live. I think selection show's at 11, so we're probably talking 1 o'clock, 1:30 tomorrow afternoon, something like that. We'll all get back together and do that. I think that'll be good. This team overperformed from what I thought. I'll admit that. Not by a lot, but a little bit. I think I had them at 21-5 in the non-conference. I think I picked them to go 17-13 in the SEC. So that would have been 38 wins going into the conference tournament. They ended up with 42. So they did. They overshot what I anticipated and what they did. So credit to them for that. I mean, I had them having a pretty good season, but they went above and beyond because they were consistent. They know their roles. There's so many Ole Miss teams and just college baseball teams in general where you got guys that don't know or accept their roles. But this team pretty much 1 through 27. I mean, look at Michael Fitzsimmons today getting another big-time hit off the bench. They're all kind of team-first guys. They all know what they are expected to do to make the engine go, and that's a huge deal. That's broken down teams in the past when they all fight for certain roles that don't fit the overall landscape of the team. But this team doesn't do that. This team is taking a roster of very, very talented guys, a roster of guys that have always been the best player on the team and fit, as I said, certain niches to make the team max out from a success standpoint. So now they move on to Friday, and then we move on to tomorrow. So, again, plenty of coverage at rebelgrove.com. Appreciate you joining me, and we'll all get back together tomorrow. Let's go 1:30, something like that. We'll talk about it. We'll break down the regional, the potential super regional matchups, and then any other snubs that happen with the SEC or teams that we have some interest in. So appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.